Welcome everybody to today's webinar about an exciting innovation in the DNA identification. And we will be today showcasing this innovation within the criminal investigation or law enforcement setting. Before we start, just a little housekeeping. This webinar will take no more than 30 minutes. After which we will open the Q&A session. To ask the questions, please use the Q&A functionality of Zoom that you can see in the control panel in the bottom. We will collect the questions and answer them at the end during the Q&A session. We will keep the Q&A session open until we answer all your questions. And then finally, you don't need to take any notes if you've seen something interesting. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending you the recording after we finish this session. Let me introduce you the speakers for today. We have representatives or speakers from two companies. I will explain that later. So let's start with our guests from Veridos. We have Jörg Senekovic and Stefan Sauter. From Innovatrics, we have Michala Frankova and Martin Markov. We will start with an introduction to the DNA identification topic, and then we will be showing you a short demo from Innovatrics ABIS application or software for criminal investigation. And after that, we will proceed with the Q&A session. Now, briefly about this joint webinar. It is hosted by two companies, as I anticipated at the beginning. It is Veridos and Innovatrics. Our two companies together have a long partnership in building an important impact within the identity universe. Together, we deliver trusted documents, we provide safe borders, create safer borders. And just recently, we started to explore the innovation in DNA identification in both forensic and civilian settings. Today, we will be focusing on showcasing the DNA identification for law enforcement agencies. Briefly about our companies. Innovatrics is an independent provider of biometric solutions for governments and enterprises. Our R&D has been pioneering the research of biometric algorithms since 2004. And our algorithms rank among the best in an independent benchmarks of National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States. In 19 years of our history, we have delivered more than 500 successful identification projects, benefiting more than 1 billion people worldwide. We have headquarters and R&D in the heart of Europe, in Slovakia and in Czech Republic. We have offices in Brazil and Singapore, and we have our representatives in Dubai, India, and Taiwan. This from Innovatrics side, and now let me give word to Jörg from Veridos to introduce, say a few words about the Veridos company.
Welcome everybody to the webinar. Let me introduce Veridos briefly. Veridos is a joint venture of Giesecke & Devrient and Bundesdruckerei, the German state printer. Both companies have a very long history, been founded in the 1800s, and we are covering the whole space domain of identity and document solutions. If you jump to the next slide, please. We are providing everything from identity documents, from the documents themselves, personalization, to the enrollment and issuance solutions, and of course, to the verification of documents and identities. And this is why we're here today, because we're excited about the new biometric modality DNA. And with that, I pass that on to my colleague.
So I'm Stefan, not Jörg. Yeah. So hello. I just want to tell you about our VeriDNA solution based on the biometrics of DNA. So next slide, please. A brief short introduction about the history of DNA profiling. All started around 40 years ago that Sir Alec Jeffrey developed the DNA fingerprinting technique, which is still valid today in Britain. And it took 2 years that the first criminal case was solved by the DNA fingerprinting in the UK. Next, please. And UK was also a world record holder. They installed the first DNA database because a database is very important to that you can track other records. You have to record something, being able to track and being fast. In 2012, and that's what we are, why I mentioned that, the rapid DNA analysis came on the surface. They started with commercial selling, which is the case now. And the last point is, next please, 2020, and even now by today, the DNA fingerprinting, DNA profiling, it's the similar naming, is still the very important thing in forensics. And yeah, that's just an overview. But what is DNA? Please, next. DNA ID, we call it's the synonym of DNA profile. Actually, it's very easy. You have chromosomes, a set of chromosome here. I just have the example of chromosome 2. You see that on bottom. And on the chromosome, on each chromosome, you will find so-called STRs, short tandem repeats. And my favorite is the STR TPOX. You see the TPOX, and what you do is, biochemically, you just measure the length of this TPOX. And as it called short tandem repeat, that means you see the subunits, they repeat several often in different individuals. So I have here now the 9 repeats. So the TPOX on this chromosome has the length 9. And the result, please next. The result, actually, the DNA profile, or we call it DNA ID, is actually just the sum of several measurements between 15 and 27 length, and you just write down on the left-hand side. You see my DNA profile. We have here 27 measurements, and you see on the left column the name of the STRs, and on the middle and on the right-hand side just the number of repeats. Why two columns? Not please back, because you have 2 chromosomes. You have from the mother and from the father. Therefore, you have 2 times TPOX. You have, for example, in my case, you have TPOX 9 and TPOX 10. And this is actually a DNA ID is nothing more than only a length pattern. And very important, it is absolutely anonymous. You just have naming of weird DNA areas, STRs, and just numbers. So no one knows anything about you. This is very important to know. A DNA profile is just a number string, but it is unique for you. Next, please. And this, just to tell you, and please next, press all of them. Yes, here. What the plus of the DNA profile is of that you also are DNA as a biometric, that you can also look for over generation. You inherit actually your profile. Overall, you see on top, you see the parents, you see 2 individuals, and on top, the relationship coefficient on the right-hand side in orange seems it is a degree of telling how what's the relationship between 2 DNA IDs. And of course, when you identify yourself or identical twins, you have a relationship coefficient 1. That means you have 100% accordance. You use that, by the way, at law enforcement, because you go to the crime scene, you collect blood, you collect secret blood, you collect DNA IDs, and then you want to compare it with another entry in the DNA database, maybe made from a reference from a suspect at the police station. Here, you just compare with yourself. The second is, and this is very important to know, half of your DNA profile goes to the next generation. So I'll try to show this. The man has the TPOX 9 and 10, and the woman, the mother, has 7, 13. And one out of the two inherit the siblings. So you see, in each of the four, either the 9 or the 10 is inside of the father's profile. The same with the mother. So you use kinship analysis by just doing the same. You just do STR analysis, and always minimum half of the DNA profile of the parent is inside of the sibling. And you use that, by the way, for disaster victim identification. When a soldier, for example, the father died during a war, and you take the son or the daughter to identify the man. So I just want to tell you, you can also use a DNA profile for relationship. Okay, next slide, please. Now we're coming to the rapid DNA concept. The rapid DNA, it is the fully automated. It is made by, manufactured by Andy Technology or Corporation we are partnering with. They just use 4 components. You have the buccal swab, where you collect the DNA, either the person cheek swab, or you go to the crime scene, blood, saliva, touch. You put this, maybe you can take the other slide, the right-hand side, to make it easier. You collect it, and then you insert the swab into the processing chip, which is actually everything is preloaded with all the reagents and the gel which is needed to do the biochemical DNA ID or profiling. Then you load the chip into the analysis instrument. This is the back left. It is providing you with all the supplies, with the power, electricity, with the pressure, air pressure. And after 2 hours, and you see on the right down, everything is done what is normally being done in a normal lab inside of the consumable of the chip. And after 2 hours, you have actionable results. So next slides, please. Please, all of them. But of course, when you have doubts, the anti-rapid DNA technology is proven and valid because it has all the certifications and meets all the standards which has a normal accredited lab as well. So it is approved in first, and by now it is approved at the NIST, FBI NIST. It is ISO certificated, and we get approved, and shock and vibration resistant. Coming now to our VeriDNA solution, we use Andy as the generator for the DNA IDs. This is the world record holder. Then it is handing over to our Veridos world, to our tools to do the enrollment. Later on, we use the Innovatrics ABIS as also the world-class standard to record it into an application. And later, if someone wants to use it in a, for example, national identification platform, we can also provide them with the verification tools. So it is a comprehensive solution, our VeriDNA solution. Okay, next and last. These are the main application areas. Of course, we use it for forensic medicine and law enforcement, the traditional forensic parts. And here we're talking about law enforcement, but also for immigration cases when it comes to identification of suspect persons at entry ports, at airports. And later on, we want to use it maybe as a normal biometric in a national ID infrastructure. So that's it from my side. You can use it stationary and mobile. This is what I have left to tell you. It is mobile. You can use it also on site. So thank you very much. And I will hand over now to,
Thank you,
I
Stefan.
think, Martin.
Yes, I will ask Martin now to share his screen.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, and Michaela will briefly start or introduce the use of DNA within the forensics science and criminal investigation.
Perfect. Welcome, everyone. Hello. So while Martin is loading our Innovatrics ABIS DNA screen on, I will tell you a little bit more about why DNA is so important. So I would like to thank Stefan for explanation of DNA and very important kinship rules. And I think amazing very DNA solution, because if we can get a the DNA profile in 90 minutes, that's something what really changes the whole reality. So, and why we decided to add DNA to our biometric data. So we do think it's important to collect faces and fingerprints, but the crime scenes are a little bit more complex, and DNA is integral part of forensics. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to add DNA as biometric data collected. So everyone has unique DNA, as it's almost same with the fingerprints. Okay, here except identical twins, but it's still very unique. It's very similar to your relatives, which is very important in investigation, because let's say we don't have, the person in our database, the person was never booked, and we don't have their DNA. We may have a DNA of their relatives, and that's the way how we can continue the investigation. Oftentimes what people don't realize, DNA is transferred without our knowledge. So, it's oftentimes found at a crime scene. It can be amplified. So even if we find very little, we can amplify it and still process it. It's very robust, so it doesn't degrade that easily. Of course, here it again depends on the conditions. It doesn't change throughout the lifetime. Same with fingerprints, but here it's even better because it doesn't change at all. Fingerprints, when you grow, fingers grow with you. So this is another very good thing about DNA. And another thing is DNA is same all over the body. So no intimate samples are necessary. The swab from the mouth is enough. And it's the same, identical and also present in all biological materials. So I think I just gave you loads of information. So I will keep it short and sweet, and I will let Martin to show you how we enter the DNA, in what format, and how we process it. What are the probabilities? And yeah, please, Martin, take over. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So I would like to introduce this very exciting modality, exciting also for me, because it is a little bit of a pet project of mine here at Innovatrics. So basically, in our standard ABIS, let's say the basic screen, which you can see in our newest ABIS, this is 9, you can find all the applicants as before, select different, filters and show names, and you can, decide to open the applicant. Let's open in another tab, and this applicant has all the information that he had before and all the information you need for criminal investigation. So you have all the faces from different angles. You have the fingerprints with, the support of our industry-leading algorithms for latent identification with palms and everything. And the newest addition is DNA. So this is how we store the DNA inside of Innovatrics ABIS. It is basically textual data, and you store information about different locuses, and you store values for each of the locus on both of the alleles. So as mentioned by Stefan before, you have one side which is inherited from one parent, the other side which is inherited from the other parent. And here you can see very quickly, you can jump directly into DNA search. So if we just click this, what comes up is DNA search inside of Innovatrics' ABIS. On the left side, we are showing the reference, and if we click the search button and adjust the settings, so let's say we want to look for self or identical twins, since it is the same DNA search. Let me click the search button, and now we get all of the results which came up from Innovatrics' ABIS. So all of the applicants which have DNA modality are shown on the right side. We can select one or another. And what is actually very good about Innovatrics DNA search is that not only we can compare the DNAs from the same country from the same standard, but different countries are using different standards. So United States are using different sets than European Union, than UK, than China, etc. So what we actually can do, we can look only on the parts which are corresponding, which are the same, and compare only those values and calculate only the statistical probability for each of the part. Okay, you might be asking, yes, but if we have not enough data, maybe the search isn't valid. You know, if you have only 2 or 3 or maybe 5 overlapping locuses, you might be worried that this is not good enough. And yes, that might be true. And that's why we have settings to, you know, adjust this and say, you know, what's the jurisdiction in your country? How many locuses do you need to have? Maybe you need to have 10 locuses. You just adjust the value, click on search, and you get only the results which have the corresponding amount of matching locuses. Okay. And what we are showing here, so we are showing the information which you can derive the kinship analysis. I will explain this later. And we are also showing likelihood information. This in a scientific format because it is, you know, probability of someone random being this same person based on this DNA data is in hundreds of billions. So, you know, it would be impractical to show that huge number. But it just shows that how high of a probability, how small of a chance it is to have a false hit based on DNA. Mostly if you have so many locuses and so many information, each of them can be adjusted. Okay, what else we use in our DNA search? So we can also decide, let's use different population database. So how do we actually calculate this value, this probability? So each country has a different probability of having different locuses. So you can say that, oh, maybe in Europe, the probability lots of people has on the TPOX locus has value of 15, but in Asia, the most popular is 9. So the number will be different. So let's say we choose not a worldwide population database, but we choose Asian database. And we can see that the probability is adjusted slightly based on the population database. So this way, you can present this information as needed, and you can show this is based on the population database which you are using, and you can be using your own population database. Based on this, you can show, okay, this is the probability, and in the criminal setup, let the jury decide, okay, is this enough of a strong probability for us? Okay, and let's move to the exciting part, and the part which is different based on each from each other modality. So when you have faces, you can find the identity of the person. When you have fingerprints, you can find, you know, if this is the same person. But when you have DNA and you said, okay, I want to find this person, and you don't have this person in the database, you have more options. The option is to use search of, you know, related persons. So it is possible that this person, which we do not have DNA match for this person in our database, might have younger relatives, for example, children inside of the database. And if we search for the children of this person, or not only children, but any parent-child type of relationship, we will see that we have 2 hits inside of the database. You can also see that the hit against in the parent-child type of relationship is much less significant. So it is no longer in billions, it is just in millions or hundreds of thousands of, you know, the likelihood that it will be erroneous hit. And here we can see the definition, what was Stefan explaining. If you have a parent-child type of relationship, you will inherit 1 of the allele value from each of the parents. So yes, it is probable that you will have the same if both parents have the same. So you can also have this type of double hit, which we are displaying. But you will, in each of the locus, you will have one allele value, which is the same in the parent-child type of relationships. And how we are showing this? We are showing this in the single match percentage. So in the parent-child type of relationship, you should expect, apart from a random chance, as in this case, that you will have 100% single match or something similar, as we have it on the parent-child type of preset. On other type of relationships, it will be between, let's say we want to show how it will look between siblings. So we are expecting this to our siblings. Let's show this and this woman, search her DNA, said, okay, I'm looking for full sibling type of match, and I will get the same person. And what am I expecting? I'm expecting that because of the statistical probability, he will have 50% single matches, 25% double matches, and 25% no matches. It is not, statistics apply, so here it is 28 and 42, but it is roughly according to the statistics, and this way you can use the statistical probability not only to find parent-child relationship, but also siblings, and we have preset also cousins and also second-degree type of relationship, which is, grandparent-grandchild type of relationships and many other. If we adjust the settings to second degree, we can see that we have some hit with some person, but the probability of this hit in the second degree can be quite low. Here we can see every 203rd person in the population database has the same chance of being, for example, second cousin than this person. So it depends on the chance. It depends on which values the locuses have, on which population database you are using, but the likelihood might be quite different. So if you are going further away than the second degree type of relationship, then you can expect that the values and the likelihood will get so low that it is no longer relevant for criminal investigation. But nonetheless, this way you can also use this search, and apart from anything else which we have, so apart from faces, fingerprints, and irises, you can use DNA search to also find relationship information and help with your criminal investigation. So this will be all from my point of view.
Thank you very much. We will now start with the Q&A session. So let me share screen. Okay. Yes. And let's start with the first question. I believe, as I look at the questions, that we need to address this one and explain better the use of the DNA and the demo that we have just shown. So the question is goes like this. So are you prompting the establishment of a national DNA database? It was looking like that a little bit in the demo, maybe.
Okay.
Wouldn't there be a concern by the population for misuse? Why would the government want to know who I was related to? So I would ask you, Marco, start to answer and explain what actually did we see during the demo, that it wasn't a national database. And then maybe Michaela can complete the answer with explaining better why this is important feature for the criminal investigation and who is using this and what are the conditions of using this kind of information and data?
Okay, so we are not showing a national database, and in most of the jurisdictions, this is not the case that the government would force any type of DNA enrollment. But in some jurisdictions, it might be helpful to have, for example, criminal records which contain DNA. The reason for this is that it was many cases where actually DNA helped to find the real perpetrator and set innocent people free because they were wrongly convicted. And there are hundreds of cases of such use worldwide. So this is one use case, the criminal one. So most of the population does not have to even think about having their DNA in some database, because it depends on the local laws and a local jurisdiction how they handle this, and it is both useful directly for this criminal investigation use case. And the DNA, it can be collected. It can be collected with the rapid DNA devices, as Jörg showed. It can be collected traditionally as it is right now, and as the databases are already established. So you can you already have criminal DNA databases. You have databases of risky jobs, like, for example, soldiers. When you have DNA database of soldiers, then if you have a disaster and you do not have any other way of identifying this person, you still have the DNA record. And for the relationship, it might be very good for the people if they lost someone at disaster. It might be a natural disaster, for example, or he was a soldier, or some any other unfortunate event, to help identify this person with the relatives. So the relatives can also provide this voluntarily because they want to identify someone. So this is basically from.
Thank you, Martin. Michaela, would you like to add something, Jörg or Stefan?
Yeah, I mean, like as Martin said, it is even if it's not a national database, it can always help each law enforcement to have this information along with all the other biometric data, because it's so commonly found at the crime scenes. So I don't think there would be an issue with this. And plus, not everyone wants to use a national database. For example, the CODIS, the FBI database, it's offered to countries, but then they have access to their data. Let's say there are agencies, as Martin mentioned, and they want to keep their data only for themselves. For example, it's soldiers, and they want to keep the data for themselves and not to have anyone else going into the database. It would be a perfect solution because they could keep it, in one single place without, giving the information out. So even there are states or countries which don't want to share their data. So let's say there is in India, there is a state who wants to keep their DNA profiles just for themselves, for the investigations. So I think there are many uses for this.
And also maybe the motivation why we are doing this, it is also common practice in, for example, registrations of soldiers, to get all of this information, to get the faces, get the fingerprints, or in criminal registrations, you collect this data and you also collect the DNA samples, but you keep each of the modality on different servers, different platforms, and you don't have it all in one place. And this way, you can use all of our tools, all of our algorithms, with all the biometric data that you can collect. So this way, you help to keep it all in one place, and it is much user-friendly for the agencies when they need to use this information.
And also much faster. And if there is any, issue about personal information being given out, Stefan said it very good. It's very anonymized. There are alphanumerical characters no one cannot read. So someone has information about you, but they can't read it. They don't know who you are.
Okay, and maybe
So
also
maybe,
one. Yeah, go on.
Let me add something. Yes, first of all, it is anonymous. It is just a number string without any personal information. So I hope everybody agrees this is not harming anyone. Secondly, when it comes to kinship, I want just to address that we are talking about law enforcement. We are just comparing offenders by a suspect, for example, DNA ID. So it is not, you do not search on everybody outside, inside of the country. You just screen, for example, the DNA criminal database where all the offenders are already inside. And if you're not lucky and you come with for example, from a crime scene, and there is no match inside of the criminal database, but you know the offender you have the DNA of the offender, then you go for the relative and look, maybe the brother is, or the sister is inside, or the father, and then you can filter. So it helps the police to solve clear and criminal cases and not to annoy the public. It's very important to know.
And also,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, sorry. And exactly as Stefan just said, let's say we have very high profile crime and we get, I don't know, from the house, we get around 30, 40 samples of DNA. And we can basically ask victims to provide their DNA, and then we can exclude all the samples which belong to the victim. And we can really focus only the ones which we are, unknown. And we know, like these are unknown, we can focus on them. And it really like speeds up the time for the forensics experts, for the investigators, and really cuts down the resources and the time.
Okay, thank you. I hope we answered this first question that actually was expected. DNA is a sensitive topic, and its use within the criminal investigation and forensics is something that is not clear on the first touch usually. Now, I would like to proceed with the questions that actually are about the solution and how it works. So let's start with the first question. If the solution can work independently without having fingerprint information, can we only use this system for DNA matching?
Okay, so basically all of our ABIS is fully modular. So this was always the case and will be the case that you can use any of the modalities in combination. You can use only, for example, you can only want to store faces for a visual clarity, but do not want to use matching for the faces and use DNA. So any other combination, only DNA, only fingerprints, combination of all of them or subsets, we can do it.
Thank you. Are the search profiles adjusted for male-female DNA differences? XY versus XX chromosomes.
Okay, so maybe just for the explanation. We are using strDNA, and strDNA is looking at different chromosomes. So we have, all the 23 of them, and we can, some of them are on this chromosome, that chromosome, and the only one which are different is the X and Y chromosome. There are some on the X chromosome you can use, and there are also some which are on the Y chromosome, the Y STR, and this could be used only for males, but we can use it, but we don't use that right now. Right now, we are focusing only on the STR DNA, which is universal for both genders.
Anybody else? Maybe Stefan, would you like to add something to this answer?
Yes, in principle, he's right. You have two STRs on the X and on the Y you use to identify the gender. So this is the only information you get when you come from the crime scene, for example, and you analyze the DNA ID, the profile. Then you just know, is the offender male or female, because you use the same STRs on both chromosomes. But that's the exception. The DNA profile itself is just a number string. And the problem is for the law enforcement, for police, when you come from the crime scene and you have no hint, no match in the database, you know nothing from this person, from the offender who was there, because you have only numbers. Okay, you know the gender, that's the only thing. So the positive, that it is completely anonymous and private, is also the negative for the police. But that it is how it is, and therefore I think it's good to know that the DNA profile keeps 100% your privacy. because it is only numbers. And if someone calls me saying, okay, Stefan, I hacked your DNA profile, I would say, please publish that, because TPOX 9 and 10, you remember, this is my length on STR TPOX. So who wants to know that? And if someone knows that, has no information, but it's just my combination. And overall, over the other 26 measurements, it's a unique number string, but the number string itself contains nothing, no information. It's just my individual number, serial number,
Okay,
without any content.
Maybe just to clarify one more this point, many people are familiar with the DNA services where you can analyze and it says, okay, you have probability of this disease, or you have blue hair and
Yeah.
you have brown eyes or whatever. This is not the STR DNA. It is different. It is looking at different values, different things, which actually different portions of the DNA, which actually tell you something about the person. But the STR DNA profiles do not tell you anything about the physiological characteristic of the person.
Okay, thank you. Let's proceed with the question from Corey. This is probably for Stefan, but you will tell me who wants to answer. When a sample collected has a multiple person's DNA, how does the algorithm help differentiate?
Again, I could not understand.
Well, when a sample that is collected has
Yeah.
a multiple DNA,
Yeah.
DNAs.
I understand. A mixture. It is, you have two person. Yes, you have two different types. When it comes to sexual assault, for example, then you have when you take the intimate collection of the woman, then you have the female and the male, the semen DNA. In here, normally you destroy the female chemically, and then you will be able to analyze the males. This is one thing. When it comes to sexual assault, you just eliminate the women. But if you have more, for example, multiple sexual assault, you have 1, 2, 3 offenders raping a woman. Here it is like that. As by the way, also we do the same, exact the same as a lab. It is just then go into a so-called expert system, a statistical expert system. You collect normally from the offender the DNA IDs, and then you load this not in the AndyRapid DNA. You load it in specific software, and the software tries to identify, to separate all single DNA IDs statistically. But when it comes to 3 to 4, it is statistically not possible anymore. No one in the world can separate this then. But when you have 1 or 2 offenders, they can do this quite good. But this is not being done on our system. It is being done on worldwide accepted statistical softwares, where you try to separate the mixtures. It's called mixtures when you have a mixture of 2 or 3 person inside of one DNA ID.
Thank you, Stefan. Let's proceed with another question. Is it your own DNA matcher or Andy's one?
Basically, it is our DNA measure. So we are comparing the values. So it is not something which is difficult to in the conceptual realm. It is much simpler than comparing fingerprints or faces. Yeah. So it is our own, but it doesn't
maybe
much.
Let me add something about the STRs. Actually, we have right now worldwide around 50 STRs, which are good for DNA analysis. And what Martin mentioned is that every single country in the world has sometimes a different combination using different STRs. So the US code is they use 20 STRs. In UK and in Europe, we have 17. And so it is 10 out of all the country-specific STR marker systems are overlapping, only 10. And the others, they are using different. For example, the code is 20, they have 6 different from the European. But the good news is that our system, the AndyRapid DNA, we do 27 measurements, and and it is overlapping of all existing national marker systems. So when it comes to US, we have all the 20 CODIS SDRs. When it comes to Europe, of course we match all the 16 SDRs. And when it comes to Interpol, trying to match maybe international, asking US, you come with the European SDR profile and you ask for searches in the CODIS database, as we can provide then with the 27, they can provide then instead of 16, the 27, and then it is a full marker system for the CODIS database. So as we have more than 20, we are providing 27. It's matching all existing national SDR marker systems.
Thank you. Let's proceed with the question from Richard. He has a question about the matcher. What form does the matcher algorithm take? Is it simply vector distance?
Yes, we can equate this. Basically, you do not have any ambiguity. So if York said he has 9 and 10 on the T-box, if you compare it, his children will have either 9 or 10, and so this way it is just comparing the values. It is not a rocket science. So yes, it is roughly comparing the vectors.
Thank you, Martin. Now another question about the costs. So what does it cost to add DNA to the record? So maybe we can explain better the cost of the analysis, and then I don't know if you want to add something from the ABIS point of view.
So maybe from our point of view, we can, is storing just a little bit of data, so it is not a problem from the ABIS point of view, and you can import any STR DNA data. So you can either have it from a commercial laboratory which provide these services, or also from rapid DNA machines like one from Andy. And maybe Stefan will answer more about the cost.
It is. I don't want to go into the bits and bytes. It's really depending the cost of from the volume you're using. So, but let me add that the costs are quite the same as you have in a traditional lab per sample. Of course, it's a high innovative solution technology, which had in the past $500 million on investment, but it is comparable to the normal traditional lab, but it is faster and it is mobile. So, but it depends on the volume, because every single project is different, and also there the costs are different.
Okay, let's proceed with the technicalities about the rapid DNA. So how much time it will take to extract DNA from swab sample?
Yes, as said before, it is just 90 minutes, and you don't have to even stand by. It is everything is once the swab is inside of the consumable, the chip, the US they call it chip. Then it takes you have 3 to 4 different large procedures. It is the extraction. It takes, I would say, 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Then you make the dyeing and then the amplification. That's the PCR. It takes another 15 to 20 minutes. And the last big thing is the separation of the length during the capillary electrophoresis, which takes also half an hour. And then later on, which is very important, it is already integrated an expert review system software. So once the DNA ID is generated, it is also automatically reviewed, is it valid or not? And this overall takes you 90 minutes to analyze, fully automated. You don't have to do anything. You just press start, and after 90 minutes, there is the result, even validated. And yes, all major process takes its time, sometimes are parallel doing. So, but overall it takes for reference samples using people 94 minutes, And for crime scene or disaster victim identification samples, it takes 104 minutes, a little bit longer because the quality and the amount of DNA is less than in the buccal swab sample. And therefore, you need more PCR cycles, and beforehand you need doing concentration, another processing. So it takes you 10 minutes more. But as said before, even it takes you 10 minutes more, you can go for a coffee or you do other things because you don't have to stand by. And very important, once it is reviewed and validated, it is ready for being uploaded in US because there is a so-called Rapid DNA Act in the US. And when it comes to validation and once the Andy technology tells you it is a valid DNA, then you can send it over into CODIS database without personal interference anymore. So it is actually very safe and it takes below 2 hours and fully automated. That means you don't have to be technical expert or scientific expert. I ask the people, you know how to, you can drive a car, but do you know the engine or the brake? No. You just need to know that it is working, and it's the same here. You just have you just have to trust into the technology, and you can trust because we have all the certification. And once you press the button, everybody can do that. Then it is doing it automatically.
Thank you very much. And we have the last question. This is mostly about the use cases of technology. So I will read the question and then maybe I will reformulate it in more simple way. So is the primary target the criminal space and soldiers, or is the intention to use it in the future for identification and verification in commercial space like banking, law enforcement, ID space, etc., as is currently the case with the fingerprints, iris, and facial biometrics? So maybe we can answer a little bit about the possible use of rapid DNA and the identification and identity verification.
Okay, so maybe just the system can be used wherever it is practical for the use case. And right now, because of the cost and everything, the most practical use cases are criminal ones. The enrollment of, critical workers, which like soldiers, the, identification of disaster victims, and this, or also one case is, for example, enrollment of really small children when you cannot use traditional biometrics at birth, but DNA is usable. So there are few right now a little bit edge and where you have quite high risk and want to be certain of the identity. Okay, there are the use cases right now, but as the cost of the test itself will possibly, hopefully go down, then maybe the use cases might expand into wherever it is practical and also wherever it is legal for the jurisdiction.
Maybe one other topic to add here is that other biometrics, such as fingerprints, iris, or facials, they can be taken instantaneously and they can also be compared instantaneously. While the comparison is also instantaneous on the ABIS backend for the DNA, the preparation of the probe is going to take longer, as we learned, up to 90 minutes or maybe a little bit longer than that. So in some of the civil cases you would be thinking about, such as banking, that's probably not practical. It is more on person. And the other benefit, I think, that is what makes it so attractive is that it goes beyond the traditional biometrics, which are not shared with other individuals as the DNA. That means this is the first time you have the option to actually target relatives or people close to the person or you're looking at, and that doesn't have to be for, I mean, right now it's mostly criminal cases, but it doesn't have to be criminal cases. It could also be protection cases or other things. So that's the first time you can do that with that. But in the civil space, it would be probably more a voluntary option that you say, I would like to register my DNA because I would like to have some kind of protection for my family if something happens, that somebody can identify them or whatever.
And just keep in mind, 30 years ago, the fingerprint was just a biometric for law enforcement. Right now, you just everybody opens the mobile phone with the fingerprint. So it converted from criminal to civil application. And actually, as it is completely anonymous, a DNA profile, we can imagine the same thing. The only thing is that it takes so much longer, and therefore just use it for as an ultimate proof. If everything else, if all other biometrics doesn't come to a clear solution, then you can use the DNA ID identification over the profiling. Then it takes 90 minutes, or in the future just 45 minutes. But then this is the limit factor, and therefore it will not come like the fingerprint completely into the public, but it will. It's a good thing when it is because it's 100% identifier, yeah, and anonymous.
So if it's possible to create the DNA profile on a secure carrier, such as injecting it into ID cards, then of course the full field of using that as an identification against the backend system becomes feasible. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have one more question, but it's duplicate. We already answered that. So that is it. I would really like to thank Jörg, Stefan, Michael, and Martin for this presentation.
Pleasure.
As I said, we will be receiving the recording from this webinar after the session. Thank you very much for attending, and I wish you a nice, a pleasant rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.